payment services from banks, money transmitters, but also in the digital asset space. Custodians, exchanges, wallet providers, counseling them on money transmitter issues, consumer compliance, securities, anti-money laundering, kind of run the gamut. So happy to help you. If you have any questions, I'll be around for the event. But otherwise, thanks to the speakers and Blockchain by Women.
Guys, so just a quick background on Blockchain by Women. How many of you guys have been to one of our events before? Okay, some of you, great. So I'll be quick. So we started a couple of years ago, and the focus of our group is to increase diversity, but also focus on and delve into specific blockchain topics like the one we're talking about today. If you come to our website and you're interested in learning more about the other blockchain use cases that are out there, we've had a lot of panels with many very experienced and talented people talking about different blockchain use cases. So I encourage you to go to our website and check out those sessions. So before we get started, just want to do a quick level set on stablecoins and why we're here today. So for those of you who are new to stablecoins are effectively digital assets that are backed by something, and that something could be fiat, could be commodities, so fiat would be USD, Euro, and so forth. Commodity could be any kind of precious metal, like gold. Stablecoins could also be backed by other cryptocurrencies, and there's also stablecoins that are not backed by any collateral, but are managed by algorithms. So that's kind of the quick overview of what stablecoins are. Now, what we'll go into this panel today is the use cases, why stablecoins are around, what each of these women in the companies they offer have in terms of stablecoins. So while we go into that, I'll just let you guys go down the line, talk about your backgrounds, how you got into the space, and what your companies offer in terms of stablecoins.
Sure, why not? Hi everyone, I'm Miranda from OKCoin USA. So I started as a capital markets lawyer, back practicing in Asia, and did a little bit of investment banking back in London, and finally landed here in the Bay Area. So it's kind of inevitable for all kind of capital markets lawyer who interested in what's happening, the latest in the industry, to tumble into crypto. So I joined OKCoin USA office back in 2018. So I was employee number, I think, 12, and now we have 35 people in our San Francisco office. And we have a larger presentation in Asia and also in Europe. We have office in Malta. OKCoin is a crypto fiat exchange. And if you haven't heard about it, welcome to try it out. It's amazing. Is the volume okay? And the people in the back here. Okay, great. I'm Haley Lennon with Coinbase. I'm regulatory counsel there. I've been in the space for about 6 years, started at Silvergate Bank, which is a major banking partner in the space. Coinbase was actually one of the first clients I worked with at Silvergate back in the day. Then I spent 2 years at Bitflyer, which is an international virtual currency exchange company out of Tokyo, Japan, where I helped with their US expansion and getting their licenses, including the Bit license here in the US, and now I'm at Coinbase. So I've been there about 3 months, so it's still a pretty new venture for me, but my role is really interacting with all of the regulators that touch this space. We have a trust charter in New York, so working with New York DFS is a big part of my role. Talking to regulators about projects like the stablecoins is a big part of my role. So I think we're going to get into like what our businesses are involved in the stablecoin world, but I'm really excited about this part of my role, so excited to talk about it today.
Hi everyone, my name is Sochi Cazador, and I work at C Labs, where I work in the Celo platform. Celo's mission is to build an open financial system that creates prosperity for all. This is a mission that I personally care deeply for. My grandparents and my parents were Mexican migrant farmers, so I've seen firsthand how access to basic financial tools can change lives, and I'm excited to talk to you about that here today.
awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I stand by that too. Hi, everybody. I'm Catherine Coley. I run Binance US here in San Francisco. We are a easy, convenient way for you to buy and sell cryptocurrencies with your dollars. So we list about 29 coins with 50 trading pairs and are the US partner to the larger ecosystem that is Binance. Binance currently facilitates a global ecosystem truly of exchanges as well as different counterparts. So they internationally have margin lending, all sorts of features, and we've just begun our journey here in the United States to be able to launch exactly what Americans need. So we're keenly listening to what you are craving to have built, and we're building for you. So we're a small team. I've got one of my teammates here, Josh, in the corner, a big supporter of us all. So appreciate all the questions, feel your answers, and we'll kick this off on stablecoins.
So quick, just before we go into the panel, I'm Karen. So by day, I'm the CEO of Blockchain Intel, and we do blockchain analytics. Our first use case is fraud, and we help identify the bad guys. So that's for financial companies, exchanges like the ladies are, the exchanges that are here, and also we work with law enforcement. And Katya over here is also with Blockchain Intel, so if you have any questions for us, please come up. Now, the first thing we wanted to scroll into is what does each of your companies do in terms of stablecoins, and what stablecoins they do list, or what stablecoins does your exchange or your company have? And then even go into the differentiation as to, why it's better. That's good too.
Start from here. I thought this is a safe spot, but yeah. So OKCoin in the stablecoin side, OKCoin does two things. One thing is because we're a fiat crypto exchange, we list those major stablecoins, like including USDC, TrueUSD, Tether, of course, and like Paxos. And on another side, we also launched our own stablecoin called USDK outside of US though. So that's to facilitate our international, like across platform transactions. And that's mainly like how we evolved in the stablecoin space.
So Coinbase is involved in two major projects when it comes to stablecoins. The first is USDC. So USDC is a project that we launched in conjunction with Circle and formed the Center Network. So the Center Network is the administrator audit level network for USDC. USDC is a stablecoin pegged to one to one to the dollar, and it is currently sort of it is the largest regulated stablecoin, I would say, and I can get into that sort of differentiation later. But it's been around a long time, and right now it has about 450 million market cap, so it's very large and used. The second is that we're also in the Libra Association. So for people in the room who may not be as familiar with cryptocurrency, Facebook sort of put crypto and stablecoins in the spotlight when they announced their intentions to form the Libra Association. So we've been a founding member from the beginning. There are differences between USDC and the stablecoin that Libra is looking to make, and we can get more in detail on that too later in the panel. But those are the two projects that I'm working on this.
So at Celo, our unique approach is that we believe that anybody that participates in governance can actually propose a new currency. We're actually starting with the Celo dollar. Celo dollar is it's a stable currency that is pegged to the US dollar, but we foresee launching other currencies as we go to market in the next few months. The one thing that I'll say as well is that we have a stability protocol that basically adjusts the supply of the stablecoin based on the demand. So it is an algorithm-based stablecoin.
I kind of see stablecoins in a helpful and hurtful way for this ecosystem. So when stablecoins kind of came out, it was very anti what I thought we were building Bitcoin ecosystems off of. It was supposed to be not government backed, it's supposed to be beyond that. So when stablecoins kind of came through, it it was this comfort of like sigh, at least it's dollar backed, which gave a lot more, I guess the pie got larger in terms of people that felt comfortable around digital assets. The other great thing about stablecoins is that in a highly volatile world such as digital assets, it's stable. So you can still have, I kind of use the analogy of you're on the superhighway of digital assets, you can pull over on the shoulder to be on a stable coin, but if you're going to go into fiat, you got to take the exit ramp. So you can still stay on the course of remaining in a digital ecosystem while using a stable coin. And that allows for, when trading, it's successful if you want to pull yourself out of a trade, if you want to take profits, but you don't necessarily want to be going fiat, not fiat, fiat, not fiat all the time. So that's where I saw it as a huge helper. It also let people who were afraid to buy something early on take something as easy as moving regular US dollars into something that was a digital dollar or a stable coin. So with Binance US, we offer every trading pair that we list with US dollars, the token itself, and then a USDT pair or a BUSD pair. And I'll explain that a little bit later on BUSD. But the real purpose was that to allow people not to feel like they had to be 1 foot in crypto, 1 foot out every time they wanted to put the brakes on, but they could stay within the ecosystem of being in a digital asset environment. So that's what I really liked about stable coins. Although I'm always, why do you got to be out of the system? Stay in the game. But the efforts that we have at Binance US, we include USDT and then BUSD. And BUSD was launched to bridge the Binance ecosystems with a dollar-backed coin. It's run by Paxos. It's New York DFS approved. And it's actually listed on 43 other exchanges. So it's not just Binance's ecosystem that it interacts with. So that's a huge beginning to see that ability to have something or pairs based in local exchanges that have the same source or denomination in the USD. That's where we see it being a benefactor for folks that want to move currencies around the world quickly, want to have kind of a consistent approach to where they're going. But also the ability to stay with the benefits. You get, great yield on BUSD. There's a complementary system on the international exchanges for putting up collateral. You can put up collateral in BUSD for futures, and so there's some great feature sets, more for the international, just because in the US, we're just getting started.
Okay, good. So for those who are new to stablecoins, one of the big issues that stablecoins help address, Coley is starting to bring up, is volatility and how the cryptocurrencies, extremely volatile stablecoins, address some of that. Now, if you could go into this a little bit more, Haley, just what is the landscape right now in terms of stablecoins and what roles in terms of projects you're talking about and you're involved in? Do those concerns, and how are those concerns addressed?
Yeah, so we were sort of preparing for the panel, and I said that one way that when I joined Coinbase, and we obviously have many other things that have regulatory implications, really how I wrap my head around the stablecoin area is making, bucketing stablecoins into certain categories. So the way I think about it, and the way we discuss it internally at Coinbase, is there's really sort of 3 buckets of stablecoins. The first would be a stablecoin backed by a basket of assets. So the Libra Association, for example, Libra is backed by 50% USD, but the other 50% is a mix of other sovereign currencies. And one of the things that started to sort of alarm policymakers and regulators in the US when the Libra Association announced this idea is that starts to play into sort of monetary policy. If the Libra Association is able to determine how the percentages of different currencies are built within that basket of assets, that's sort of undermining the US dollar and giving monetary policy to a private company. And so that was really the way that we think about how we can be part of that association and help is being part of that conversation and seeing if there's another way to really form that stable coin in a way that isn't so sort of alarming or gets the regulators having so many questions. So that's sort of how I first think of the first bucket of a basket of assets, and that's not just Libra. Other stable coins are using sort of a mixture of different, you said commodities and a combination of different currencies. The second type of stable coin would really be able to be backed by cryptocurrency itself. And to me, it's a bit ironic because the idea of a stable coin is for it to be stable. Cryptocurrencies are often volatile. So if you are pegging a stable coin to cryptocurrency, that is going to require a lot more sort of oversight and action to help keep that stability of the stable coin. And so that requires, it requires sort of the looking over the volatility and also even trade activity to help with that. And the concern there is if you are doing action to dictate the price and limit the stability, it starts to, I'll say, have the appearance of manipulation. You are manipulating the price, and how do you make that so it's not market manipulation in the bad word, or a way in which that you could actually sort of get in trouble for it. And then the third basket, and I think will be the focus of more of the panel, is stable coins backed by one currency, specifically in the US, often USD. There are other projects, including Tether, that are similar in certain ways, but in others they are more offshore and more unregulated, and that ends up being sort of the downfall in individuals always being able to trust Tether. So for anyone who's not familiar, Tether is a stable coin but offshore, and so that's made it difficult to for people to be confident that it's backed one for one the way they say it is. It makes it harder to enforce sort of auditing, oversight of that stable coin. And it really has just turned into something where, the way they rely on banks to enforce Tether, there's no FDIC insurance offshore. And so things like that make Tether or an offshore stable coin a bit different than some of the projects we're talking about today that are USD-backed stablecoins in the US that are regulated, audited, approved by DFS, and that sort of thing. So those are sort of the three categories, but I definitely am a bit biased about sort of the USDC regulated type currency that we'll be talking a bit about today.
So Catherine, given your financial background, do you have certain metrics or things you look at in terms of stable coins to, say this is doing well, performing better, is more useful than the other ones? Are there any ways that you evaluate these stable coins?
Yeah, I think it's funny. My background is foreign exchange, so I was based in Hong Kong and London, dealing in the FX markets, and so everything for us was you traded something always against the dollar. So to have a stable coin, that's kind of all of FX is always something against the dollar or against the euro. So we would use those quote pairs, base pairs as our denominator, which I think is what crypto was trying to kind of get towards with stable coins. Is that like something that could be more of a denominator. So in FX, we never had something that was stable. That was the perk. You didn't really want stability. You wanted that volatility in that type of market environment. But in how we're evaluating stable coins for listing, especially on our platform, really comes down to a lot of the functionality beyond it. Any coin that's listed on our platform, we run through a digital asset risk assessment framework, which gives us the comfort to be able to provide that for you guys. We're not the gatekeepers to tell you what you can and cannot use. We simply want to be the platform that gives you that freedom to choose what you are comfortable with, what makes your portfolio adequate to your expectations. So we really list, as we vet through the stable coins, which ones are better utilized and better suited for our US-based community. So given USDT was the largest stable coin used all over the world, we assumed that most Americans still wanted access to it, which is where we started off with most of our pairs based against USDT. The other elements that we consider are, how can we be effectively centralized in the build out of these stable coins? It's something that's important to us to just make sure that, as you mentioned, there isn't a hotline for Tether that's a little bit difficult, but is that a strength rather than a weakness? Is there a comfort in knowing the USD isn't listed just on only Binance platforms, but it's listed on 40 other exchanges. And so that's kind of really more what it is. The backing mechanism to which it is it one-to-one purely? Are we confident in that? Is it regulated? Is it useful? Is it trading? And is it easy to redeem and mint at the same function? That mechanism is oftentimes one that's either used by the market or misunderstood. So we have to make sure that mechanism is functional for users that want to be putting in large amount of dollars into the system to trade Bitcoin and others and then take it off. Do they have enough liquidity for them to put it into the stable?
So let's drill into the usefulness aspect a little bit. And so Sochi, if you could talk about the use cases. I know Celo is new, but given your background, given what Celo's mission is, what are the use cases for stable coins and what do you think the promise is?
Yeah, definitely. So CLabs has done extensive field research in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. And I'd like to start with a story. So I actually led a research trip to Oaxaca, where I had the opportunity to meet Rosa. Rosa's husband was away working in the US, and basically she needed cash to pay for her mother's hospital bills. So at the time she needed it most, her husband sent money, but accidentally sent it to a village with the same name in a different state. And she wasn't able to access it. She had to wait a week in order for this to be corrected so that she could actually get money to pay for her mother's health condition. Now think about that. If we're talking about the use of Bitcoin or Ethereum, which are great tools, waiting a week, there would be a lot of volatility, right? So I think the promise of having a stable coin is that it offers more stability. It takes a lot of the risk away from the users. Some of the other use cases that I'm really excited about, again, I'll focus on Mexico because that's the market, was talking to some coffee farmers in the state of Chiapas, and they're actually using stable coins to issue agriculture loans. And this use case is a little bit different, right? So like Chiapas, the villages are very remote. We're talking about populations of less than 100 that are very difficult to access. Traditionally, how loans are distributed to them is basically by putting money in a car and taking them to these people. And so I think, again, the promise of having a digital currency and a stable coin addresses some of the safety concerns, as well as just being able to have that less risk. And there are a number of other use cases that we've seen as well. So one of the ones that I'm excited about, we talk a lot about financial inclusion, is having access to financial tools and products, but what about access to money and the ability to actually earn? So there's a project in Brazil called Love Crypto that basically enables micro earnings for people in favelas to earn stable coins. And I think these are examples of just how we're giving access to people that traditionally don't have access. And I think the promise for me is that we're being more inclusive, we're bringing more people in, and we're democratizing it all.
One thing I'd add is that narrative is so moving to me too, and there's a lot of conversations about things that are happening in Venezuela and just refugees in general that are stories coming out of people actually using stable coins or Bitcoins, on zip drives and bringing those with them as a way to carry a large amount of wealth with them that the government cannot confiscate or devalue. And sometimes the volatility is a good thing. If you leave and 10 days later you check your balance and you have a lot more money, that's great. But when you need that stability, stable coins come into play.
Yeah, we actually, our entire company went to Colombia to meet with Venezuelan refugees. And just for those of you that may not have access to it, like their currency, basically, they have more value by creating like ornaments and art and selling that on the street than their actual currency. So even having access to Bitcoin or Ethereum is a huge plus for them. And imagine taking that further with having a stable currency.
The only other thing I'll add, I don't know if anyone else has anything on use case, but USDC actually, the stable coin we have at Coinbase, was just a few months ago announced in Bermuda that the Bermudan government now will accept it for tax payments or any other government sort of payments. So we found that very interesting to see a government agency willing to use that currency as a form of payment. And part of it is the all the companies up here are regulated and well thought of, and I think that they trust that sort of stability and want to give their residents another way of making payments, and they can then redeem those USDCs for dollars whenever they choose to.
Do you have a survey kind of for the room though? How many people, hands raised, I'll close my eyes now. Seeing stablecoins as a method for payments in the future. Okay, that's more than I thought. That's like life cycle of fiat in, crypto write up or take profit, stablecoin payment is one that I keep hearing specifically to the U.S. Market. In Asia and other locations, it's a purely speculative game. So why would you need to take money out of the system or go pay for things? It's kind of your allotted amount that you're writing up and down on the profit. So for the U.S. though, I keep seeing people want to increase that functionality for payments. And stablecoins allow it to be not as much of a tax burden for you if you're just sticking into a stable balance that you add. So that's something that's interesting that we just see more and more coming out with using BitPay, launching several other stablecoins, not just Bitcoins. Because if you're putting fiat in to earn 2% on your certain stablecoin, that's great. Then you can use that for your donations, and it's a lot better of a system than say your checking account. So I think that's an interesting play on this digital economy that's not even in the speculative world of rich or down. There's no guarantee of that. It's just a different system that allows for that cycle of funding.
Yeah, it was, just to add on to that, from a payment perspective, it was really interesting, again, going to Latin America, there are convenience stores that sort of act as pseudo banking institutions. And so in order to buy something on Amazon, you don't have access to a bank account. You actually run down to the local 7-Eleven to pay in person, so that this payment use case is also like very powerful to folks that don't have access to it.
Just to add on to that, we talked about real world payment methods for stablecoin, and also coming back to the crypto world, I think also another use case for stablecoin is an excellent alternative for on-ramp, off-ramp for fiat channels. Yeah, and a lot of people, especially for elderlies who is not that advanced in technology side, actually stablecoin is a great gateway for them to get hooked up in the crypto world. And once you get on the stablecoin train, then you can more freely to trade into other tokens. And I see that is an amazing feature and a great function for stablecoin. Exactly, get you addicted. But it will help you get your collateral faster. So yeah, rather than sending a wire or exchange, there are some massive benefits to being able to move value.
It's interesting too, Crypto Dad, the former CFTC, who is now creating this sort of digitized dollar think tank sort of thing. So I think that we're going to start seeing more movement in the US just about exploring potential, because with some of these projects at first you just need that sort of think tank and bouncing ideas around, and who knows what will happen.
I guess I've been in crypto about 3 years, but my first 3 years essentially, my dad still asks me this question, is well, what do you think about FedCoin though? FedCoin's gonna take over everything. So I think the use case of a stable coin or something that is dollar backed is definitely resonating a lot better with people than say initial peer-to-peer network response to Bitcoin. So as a cheerleader of all people, all aspects of getting the understanding, stablecoins have done wonders. Even Libra association, just getting the unusual factors of digital money into more digestible terms for people, super helpful for this whole ecosystem. So, any way that you can connect with someone where they get the light bulb effect is huge.
So Dr. Colorado, we do have someone from the Fed here. If you
It's my first event.
She might be the next event, but,
I the last one.
yeah, we can have a little discussion afterwards about Bitcoin. And so thank you guys for talking about on-ramps and the role of stablecoins as on-ramps. We'll get to the question about central banks a little bit later. I did want to spend a little bit of time on the challenges that stablecoins face, in particular in light of some of the market manipulation that you talked about, Haley, and some of the other anti-money laundering issues that not only the cryptocurrency industry face, but also the financial industry in general. But we've been working on a case where there has been a lender that looks like they might have manipulated the market to basically depress a coin's price, and as a result, take all the collateral from the borrowers. And it's not as difficult as you would think. It's obviously happened in a lot of other markets. But if Miranda, you could talk about, especially since in light of the work that you've been doing in the regulatory space, and I know all of you have been touching in this area. So we'll start with Miranda and then go to the others about your experiences in dealing with these kinds of issues where you're trying to find bad guys or working with the regulators to find bad guys.
Sure. So, like, we talk about how good stablecoin is, right? And all those use cases. And the part of the reason why stablecoin is amazing because it's so like money that you can use, and it's so stable, and so it can be used as an exchange medium. Because it's so like money, so in regulators' eyes, like why not we're regulating it as a currency? That's a big question out there. And like probably in US, we don't see much. If we like jump out of the box of US and take a look at what's happening globally, if you look at Europe, especially like in UK and in Malta, there are like e-money laws and which require a different license for you to like if you want to like operate or issue a stablecoin. And you probably heard about the stablecoins euros issued by Stasis, and they're having a lot of discussion about what's the difference between electronic money and a real currency, and why not we are regulating it differently. And there is a much higher scrutiny on a real currency circulating than stablecoin as of today. So especially from the anti-money laundering perspective, we need to break down two different roles big players playing in the stablecoin ecosystem. Who is the issuer? Who is the administrator? Who has been like really dominating or kind of issuing the token who is in circulating, right? If we're talking about those centralized stablecoin like Tether, like USDC, the reason why take one step back, the reason why we kind of trust more on the let's say USDC, those centralized ones, because we know the issuer is a regulated entity, probably holds them like certain status in certain jurisdiction, hopefully in US. So when we coming back to US, whether it is money, MSB, money services business, and whether it has been registered on different state level, get all those registration down, that's a big factor. Like when you evaluate whether a token is properly like heavily regulated or not, and that boosts the trust. So I think a lot of the challenges actually, in my view, in 2020, a lot of challenges will arising on the regulatory side on those decentralized tokens, decentralized stablecoins backed by algorithm. There is no like we call it issuer or centralized administrator to those tokens. How do you define their obligation on the AML KYC part? Do they also have to like register with FinCEN as a MSB or not? And also on the state level, if they need to do all the registrations, what should they do? There is a big question mark on those type of decentralized stablecoins. And also, I think the ongoing lawsuit against Tether also draw a lot of attention on how even a fiat-backed stablecoin works in these days. My personal interest is also like trying to see like how the Tether suitcase will lawsuit will like play out. So a lot of things like a lot of exciting things happening for sure in the space, and we'll see how it will ride out in the next like 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, so as the issuer and we list USDC, I mean, I think what you said makes a lot of sense. It's the focus on still being a regulated entity that understands, know your customer, does the anti-money laundering program. The one topic that we found pretty interesting, and I can only speak so much to this, but is the topic of blacklisting or SDN list or counter-terrorist organizations. For those of you not familiar, so through OFAC, we're required to ensure that we're not facilitating transactions on behalf of anyone on the SDN list. That's a given. But all of the stable coins in the U.S. that are sort of are regulated, are approved by New York DFS, they have blacklisting capabilities. That's sort of part of what makes them what they are. But that turns into there's a gray area of what other people should you be blacklisting? What other organizations? And we've been having really interesting conversations at Coinbase with, members of the government, and there seems to be really an understanding, and I would say in terms of regulation, like a flexibility in their understanding of you're balancing two things. You need to regulate, you need to know who your customer is, you don't want to be facilitating terrorist activity or money laundering, but it needs to be a functional coin. It needs to do what it's meant to do, which is facilitate payments potentially or be a store of value. And so, we've talked to many states. It's clear that states view stablecoins as and issuing them as money transmission, so getting money transmitter laws in every state. For anyone really interested in this topic, last April, Texas came out with a pretty interesting memo that actually speaks to this and how they view stablecoins as money transmission and how that works. So that was, I have it written down, memo 1037, if anyone, if there's any attorneys in the room that are interested. But yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about, all the topics of money laundering, money transmitter laws, capital requirements, those all start to come into play when you're talking about stablecoins.
Just a quick add-on, so it's very interesting to see that FinCEN, I think one of their director came out earlier last year saying, especially I think it's a big shout out to those decentralized stablecoin program, is saying like I think the stablecoin administrators should be registered as MSB, like no exception. So that's a interesting turning point for a regulator came out and shouted out so clearly. Let's see how it unfolds in 2020 and how many of those stablecoin issuers or administrators will go ahead and do the registration with FinCEN.
And just for anyone who's not as familiar with this topic, so FinCEN oversees the Bank Secrecy Act, which requires anti-money laundering programs. So since 2013 is when FinCEN said, hey, if you're an exchanger or an administrator of cryptocurrency, you need to be registered. If you're just a user and you just come to Coinbase and buy some, you don't have to register as an MSB and have an anti-money laundering program. Since then, FinCEN sort of continues to say, oh, and if you're an ICO issuer, you need to be an MSB and know who your customers are. Oh, if you issue stable coins. So, they've been pretty proactive in a good way in sort of adding clarification on who else within this ecosystem would be considered a money services business and need to have an AML program. That's just sort of background.
So now that we have over 200 stable coins, the central banks around the world are also coming to issue their own coins. So when I talk to the World Economic Forum, they say there are definitely like 5 or 6 central banks that are on it right now. They've got their own coins out, or they're in pilots and they're, going to the market with these coins. The question for you guys is, so what do you think the other central banks are going to do? And what do you think is healthy?
Well, it's a huge validation of what we've been working on.
Yeah.
It's funny, prior to the running Binance US, I was at Ripple, and they hosted a central bank summit. It was end of early 2018 or end of 2017, and it was 30 central bankers in a room doing a show and tell of what they've been working on. And the consensus of that group was, thank you so much, but why would we need a digital coin borders? And a lot of times we think of that in a similar case of the US dollar inside of the United States is, Arkansas and Arizona don't need an FX rate in order to do business. So why would Canada from Montreal to Toronto or Vancouver need a digital currency for their own? And the bigger thing that we have to remember, and we reminded them, the central bankers, and the light bulbs went off, is this is not about you inside of your closed wall. This is about access for international trade, for freedom of money to be moving outside your borders as well as within your borders for a purpose. So once they realized that, the proof of concept they were thinking about within their own guidelines of how is this going to be functional for the United States to be the United States within the United States or another bank, another central bank, they got the idea that this was far larger than what they were expecting. So I think crypto has caught on to that earlier, realizing the benefit of a system that is inclusive and large at that scale. And central banks are just now beginning to catch on to realize that this isn't to fix their own ACH or SEPA or internal payment system issues. This is for a larger, broader sense of how their currency can be perceived at the global reserve. So that is a shift that we're seeing, and I agree with you. There are definitely central banks that are seeing the benefits to this. We see people really keenly preparing for how this will be influential, and they've taken off that almost naivete of realizing it was only for their own borders or within their own borders. So I think that's huge.
So I recently traveled back to China. Not too recently though. So yeah. So I think if ever you travel like in Asia, especially China these days, you'll find out like it's super convenient to just use WeChat Pay or Alipay these days to buy things without even using RMB. So, and with that being said, so when the news came out saying the Chinese government is like hurrying up, like roll up their sleeves on getting the electronic RMB coming out of the way, like it's no surprise like in China, because like from the infrastructure level, I think China has been so ready in all different ways to kind of hurry up and to roll out this thing. I think among the whole picture, actually Libra is a like huge like trigger in the great government effort. So circling back to I think what Coley just said and also what Haley just said, I think the stablecoin actually is a great trigger for all the central governments to realize the sovereignty like currency is under great competition now, and they better hurry up and roll out something more convenient, more useful in a larger scale, and to hurry up. But I don't know, like as long as it's a central bank backed token, it has to like restrict it to certain like geographic area, right? So I still have big faith in like a crypto-led central or like stablecoin who has more like representation across different geographic areas to leading the trend.
Yeah, I got into Bitcoin because I was really excited about its potential to get away from the banking system and help the unbanked. There's a lot of statistics out there that most people abroad have phones that can access exchanges, but they don't have bank accounts. So they can buy, they can figure out ways to receive cryptocurrency and have that where they couldn't go to a bank. In some countries, women can't have bank accounts, that sort of thing. so it gives freedom. But I was excited and mixed feelings about the Libra launch because I do think it ignited something. I think that it shows that things are going to happen, and the regulators and the companies need to be more in step with one another and talk about things. And I think that what's happening in China is maybe lighting a fire for the US. And so things are happening and you don't want to be left behind. Our chief legal officer at Coinbase often says, no one wants to be at the party, but you also don't want to not get an invitation. So like, you don't want to be the last person that doesn't sort of jump on this as an opportunity and innovation. So, you know, I'm excited to see where this goes, and I agree with Kath. Like, this is a very big validation of 10, 11 years ago, Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper saying, you know, with this idea, and I think people are finally catching on, so it's great.
It's their own interpretation. We'll let it happen. I think when stablecoins did come up, I was like, oh, we've lost the whole plot. But that being said, it's allowing people to digest it in a way that makes sense. Give us, you know, 10, 15 years from now, we'll be like, why are we backing this thing to fiat currencies? What were we thinking? Our whole lives are, you know, borderless now. But in the near term, we have to adapt to what we know best. People have always stored their wealth either in commodities or in the currency of their country where they're paying taxes, where they're getting salaries. So the more we see freelance, nomad life, you know, remote work, as much as that seems prevalent and more so, we also have to remember that we're insanely privileged here in San Francisco where that's a common thing. A lot of people still are definitely tied to their location where they live, to their jobs that are there, and the taxes and the burdens. You know, their lives are still quite stable. So that's where we have to remember that this is going to be an evolution of how we understand it, even if it doesn't make sense at the beginning.
So we wanted to open up just for a couple of questions. I know it's getting late, so does anybody have questions? Okay.
If you got to be a regulator for a day, what's the one thing that you would want to change for your company or your industry?
That's a really good question. I'm trying to think. I mean, sometimes my frustration is when speaking to regulators or even people outside of the industry. What always gets picked up is like the headline news, the things that you know, the hacks that Quadri does, the times that people, you know, that the industry hasn't functioned well, and so a lot of time is spent educating about the pros because the negatives sort of make the headline news. So in a way, I wish that I could sort of explain that to all regulators and get it over with for once. But, you know, being in the industry for the last 6 years, like, I really have seen the tone of the regulatory agencies change. We have, like I said at the beginning, a New York Trust Charter and the New York Bit License, and both of those are very heavy lift. They approve every token, every new product and service. And we've been talking with them about ways to improve that. So I think just openness to change would be good. Yeah, openness to change.
I totally agree. I feel like when we talk to regulators, we can definitely feel like, especially in crypto space, everyone's learning. The regulators are no expert, like better expert on those topics than us. So I think currently, especially for state regulators, they already show a great eager to open the dialogue, welcome more industry knowledge to educate them. CFTC has their lab CFTC up front, and SEC is doing all the touring meetings around the different nation. So I would say this is a great trend, but they need to open up more, make them more accessible. If the token project, if exchanges have something cutting edge, they can, the market participant can find a safe space to talk to the regulator, kind of probe what's happening, in the regulatory's hat. Yeah, that will be a great change. I would looking forward to.
If I'm going to be a regulator for the day, I change the taxation of cryptocurrencies. So right now it's treated as a property, makes things very difficult for you to conceptualize what exactly is going to be, capital gains, profit. If I'm buying this coffee, do I have to do a FICO documentation credit for it all? It's slowing down people's acceptance and understanding of it. I mean, myself included, when I learned about cryptocurrencies, it's like, great, FX, this makes sense. I know how to trade markets. And I learned about the taxation of it, and I was like, paralyzed. I was like, I don't want to do anything that's going to get me in trouble with this. So that being the hurdle to which I was potentially able to get ahead in this financial infrastructure that we're in, trade in hours that normal banking or normal markets don't allow, and still put me in a state of paralysis, unable to actually take action on it. So that's something that slows us down. I think it's there for a reason, to slow us down, because the evolution of crypto with the internet, with the compounding globalization that we're facing, we're moving faster than people that are the slowest ones in the room. So taxing us is an easy way to slow us down. It's also an easy way to kill innovation in the United States.
And I guess like what I would add is if I were a regulator for a day, I would remember that money essentially is one of the oldest forms of technology that we have, right? And to remember that this basically is a way for us to innovate and to explore how to take this to the next level to be more inclusive. So that's what I'd like to see.
I'm Aya, here to throw a curveball. So 2 questions. The first is a lot of folks think that 2020 is the year of regulation on stablecoins, primarily because the flows that we're seeing for stablecoins is mostly used to get away from capital gains or capital controls. So countries like China, countries like Russia, and countries like Brazil are the primary users of stablecoins into the US and around the world. And when you look at that, a country doesn't get to tax those capital gains, for example. And so the country is losing capital on some of those things. And at what point is it going to be a big red flag for these regulators, and how difficult? So like, for example, with USDC, there's a specific organization that they can come after. With USDT, that's a little harder for the US to go after Tether. So what is that capping point that you think where countries are going to be like, all right, we're losing a lot of money off of perhaps taxation, or not being able to track monetary flow, or not being able to see if there is anti-money laundering going on, because not all companies are as great as Coinbase for tracking some of that stuff. So what do you think that point is? That's my first question. And second question for Celo is looking specifically at the use case that you meant for Mexico for lending. Why would, if someone already has a phone and is connected to the internet, why not use an organization like Kiva or Blend or some of these other fintech companies that help with micropayments and microloans and microtransactions, as opposed to, and the peso is not that volatile, as opposed to like going to USDC if you're going to make that
The easiest answer for the first one, second one's targeted to you. Good luck. I'm really only building within the regulations that I know. So going through the FinCEN regulation, going through the state-by-state MTL process, getting USD approved by New York DFS, preparing and being in that conversation with them while we progress and these fears or concerns get elevated. That's the best way to do it. It's all unknown, so as long as we can keep those conversations open, show the roadmap of what we're working on and how we're going to be preparing for it, that's the best way to ensure that my users know that they're the best protected regulated environment. So that's really how we're looking at it. For the larger group, you can think about, what has Binance Global done on this initiative in FX? They joined the board of like the OECD. They're hugely involved from a compliance standpoint of working together with these, government regulations to make sure that they're actually being able to move forward in this progress. We all want to get somewhere next year that isn't right now where we are here. So if we can be participants in that evolution for regulators to get clarity, provide that for the industry, that's all of us are here for that. There's no reason preventing that progress, because it would be huge.
Yeah, well, thanks for the nice words about Coinbase. I mean, we do take the building of the stablecoin industry really seriously. I think what we feel is that the more collaboration there is here in the US, and then there also starts to be more discussion between regulators in the US with regulators abroad, especially as companies like ours start to be in multiple jurisdictions. I think then there's more education globally about this space, and it starts to be easier to know which stable coins are, not even stable coins, which projects are doing things the right way and which projects aren't, and starting to weed those out. So, there's definitely projects that I see where I think, it's just a matter of time before someone wakes up and sort of realizes that that project may not be what the intention of this space is. But I think that, the market likes the trusted regulated entities that are doing things the right way and have the right intentions in the product. And so we'll just start to see more of that, education with regulators, leading to positive things.
Yeah, and I think on the loan use case specifically, I'll take it both from the loan provider and the loan recipient perspective. So first, from a provider perspective, I think the offer of crypto and blockchain is that we basically enable more transparency. So I actually was speaking to one microfinance institution that I will not name, but basically had a large fraud issue where their country manager embezzled millions of dollars, right? And so it was millions of dollars that were taken away from people that should have had access to those microloans. So from a loan provider perspective, having that transparency is key. Being able to eliminate some of the costs associated with using fiat today, being able to transfer that into better terms for the loan recipients is key. And I think the other thing that we don't really talk a lot about is that digital identity is a big piece of what we're talking about when we talk about blockchain and cryptocurrency. So really being able to work with these populations to establish credit, to get access to credit, and to get access in better terms. I think some of the promise of what we're seeing with cryptocurrency.
All right, so thank you guys very much. Thank you, panelists. For coming. I encourage you to, wrong way. Thank you, K&L Gates and Celo for sponsoring. If you guys have any more questions for Celo, folks will be here to talk to you afterwards and in the future. And if you could join us online, we have a Telegram channel. We're on Twitter, Facebook. So if you want to see this or show this session to others afterwards, our Facebook Live, we'll have a recording and we'll show that to everyone. And please let me know if you have any topics you want to delve into in the next coming months. We'd love to talk about that and get a good group of speakers together just like we had tonight. So thank you guys. Thank you all. And
What? What? Yeah. Like what? What? Like not here.
Thank you. It's really good. Thank you. How is everything? It has been a while. Yeah, it has. Yeah. How is Asia? It was good. Yeah, but I was gone for a whole month. So I have a lot of things to catch up. Yeah, I bet. Yeah. I saw your email. No problem. Yeah. Sorry about that. No worries. I saw your email. Is next Friday okay? Yeah, next Friday still okay. I'm still trying to if you guys are up for a short coffee chat, we can still do Thursday or Friday. Okay. I kind of want to chat about margin for the loan in general. Okay. Yeah. That would be great. Yeah. Chat with Jennifer and find out. Yeah. Sounds good. Probably hang out a little bit. Okay. 介绍一下自己。你好，Miranda。Securitas。 Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I know her.
Yeah, pretty well.
Cecilia is our like social queen.
No.
She knows everyone.
No, I thought I'd introduce myself because I'm a portfolio company, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes. I think this is right before I start reviewing the investment documents. So.
I think so.
Yeah.
Are they still recording? I feel uncomfortable if we're chatting here.
No, we're not
It's
dangerous. Yeah.
It's still recording though, so it's better not me.
Just point it to them.
Just, there we go.
I think some like constructive criticism.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. We don't have any comments.
Oh my gosh. But you guys are too nice. We're checking the office. Thanks for coming. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Hi. Nice to meet you. What's your name?
Jose.
Jose. Hey, Jose. Oh, nice. Yeah. Johnny couldn't make it today, but nice. Which one?
I met him like a couple of years ago, right after this.
Nice.
One thing that I want to show you.
Okay.
I'm trying to get around it. I'm really sorry. What's fun? It's such a starfish with that. You know, starfish.
Oh yes, I know Starfish. You guys also host a lot of like.
We did one on Wednesday. We invited someone from OKCoin last Tuesday.
Okay.
It was for marketing.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
So you work at Starfish?
Yeah, I collaborate. You know, it's a decentralized. You know the story. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I opened it up. It's 13.
Okay.
And
Starfish is doing a great job. Yeah. Every time I don't know like where to report. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much.
no, but it's absolutely amazing. I know. It's a presentation and so on.
Right.
So she's also at the Starfish.
Miranda.
Yeah, nice to meet you. I love this class.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yes. I highly recommend a shop called Jeans.
Jeans. Oh my gosh, I've been wanting to check them out.
Yes.
I got working for classes like
Yeah. Try them out.
Sorry,
Try
are
them
yours?
That's a,
Oh no,
It's very trendy.
I'm so tired of those.
Thank you. Yeah, you have to shop around. Yeah. They have like some cool frames.
Do you work in the crypto space?
I work for OKCoin. Yeah.
yes, it runs the okay.
Yeah. So we have some like OKCoin folks here. We do crypto exchange.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, I'm familiar with the Bitcoin.
Nice.
Together? Like a stablecoin. Not together.
Okay.
I would love to work for it.
Uh-huh.
But we did a project with like a stablecoin exchange. I helped them design like an onboarding flow, like their initial landing page.
Okay.
Also, like just their thing was just putting things from USD into stablecoins. Almost like a bank account, introducing stablecoins.
Okay.
I started earlier with stablecoins to use the system.
Got you. It's more like an intro,
Yeah,
introductory.
it was a really interesting project, so I got kind of
Nice. That's good.
Yeah. What do you do now?
I'm their legal counsel.
Legal counsel. Got it. I'm so kind of on the compliance side.
Nice. Yes. So what do you do? What do you do for Starfish?
I don't work at Starfish. We have an office in space.
Oh,
We
nice.
have our
PR, right? PR.
starts with P. It's not PR. We do products in UX design for blockchain startups.
Okay.
So we have like a really good two-person team. We have different platforms.
That's good. Yeah. I haven't been to Starfish yet, but I should check it out. Yeah.
I'll
Nice meeting you.
let you know what is a good event for you.
Yes,
Like
please.
that. But I think we have some good ones.
Okay.
Who I need to talk for OKCoin to do a partner. This is a basic hard wallet.
Okay.
It's a Taiwanese company. Who I need to talk to.
Do you think this is like advertisement?
Yeah, it would be like
That's what we
all I'm
need.
here for. Oh, right here. Perfect.
No, I'm joking.
You guys are fast.
Yeah, but Lee is overworking our social media stuff. They want to do advertisement on the
So this is a new hard wallet Are you familiar with CQX?
No.
It's a new company. I'm representing them in the United States, and I'm going to help them to Latin America, Spain as well. Basically, it's a really cool company. They are producing right now 3 hard wallets with Bluetooth, so enable people to do 3 transactions without to be connected to the internet. So right now, I'm talking with Dash, Venezuela, trying to do a partnership. The idea is try to talk with you, OKCoin, try to see how can we do a limited edition OKCoin wallet that we can partner up, and who is the right person.
Give me your card because we're always looking for new ways to do promotions. So.
I'm friend of Johnny. I was telling Miranda.
Friend of Johnny?
Johnny's my friend. Yeah. I was
He
talking to
knows
him.
you're in.
I was talking to him the other day.
I'd give you mine, but we don't have cards.
I hate bringing cards. This is a really old card that I don't know.
No, that's fine.
But my phone is there and the email is there. Jose. Elaine. Very nice meeting you. I think
It's a beautiful design.
it's beautiful. It's awesome. This is $150. There is another, but which is really cool. First, the display has the QR code, so you can go with your phone. So it kind of fixes the tap solution.
Yeah.
Touch screen. It's like the opposite to a Ledger Nano. So yeah, really cool. The cool thing about these guys, they are launching. They're coming at the Bitcoin 2020, and they are launching the point of sale. So they are doing the whole thing. Hard wallets with Bluetooth, point of sale with Bluetooth, and the vending machine module that is coming up. So people can actually use stable in Venezuela, what we are going to do. So 1% of the stores in Caracas already they are accepting crypto, which is crazy. They expect in 2 years it can go up to 10%. Burger King accepts crypto. You can buy a burger in Caracas with crypto. Imagine, right? Like the adoption there because they need it. So probably survival. So we're trying to work out the deal, they don't have the money to pay for wallet. But so you send me an email, I send you an email, I follow you. I send you all the information and everything. The guys are coming next month.
Great. And we'll be there,
Yeah, play around with it.
Yeah, we'll be there at
Oh, you have your
Yeah, we're based here.
Actually, I invite Jim.
Jim's my boss.
For the marketing department.
Yeah.
Last Tuesday, we had an event at the Starbucks.
Yeah, I know.
And I don't know what happened.
Jim? That might have been the day he had an accident. He was on his, well, I shouldn't laugh. He was on, he rides like a motorized, not a scooter anymore, like one of the skateboards.
One wheel.
No, I think it's a 2. It's got 4 wheels.
Oh, the one with the... Yeah. So that's my thing.
I don't know, I'm like, I
so he's got all scraped up and bumped up.
Oh my God.
He wears a lot of protection, so he's okay. He was kind of out last week.
He was a sketcher and everything. And I never checked.
I was on vacation. I got back and he's like got stitches everywhere. He's got stitches on his teeth. He went through his clothes. His clothes are all ripped up. Yeah. But it's okay.
I'll show you, and then you sync it with your phone, and you don't bring it. You just sync it with your phone.
I have actually, yeah.
Do you also work at OKCoin?
Yeah.
Oh, you work at So hopefully I'm trying to get something like this for you guys so we can do a partnership.
And a lot of those like have very detailed descriptions.
So the app only works in iOS and Android, but like you can go to, so you can do, I'll show you the whole process. It's a class, not an app. It's an app, or you can actually go on the web.
Oh yeah.
So you can just scan the QR code and take you to the website, right?
You guys have like a specific crypto like department or? Well, our entire capital market in San Francisco essentially. Oh yeah. And I think someone from Coley.
So that's the website. Here you can see all the products they have. They recently received an award. The reason why I took them as my customers, even though I love their wallets, I've been around for a while. I know how it's easy to use their wallets, more for promotion, the POS. We got the product I got just makes so much money. It really works.
It's not going very well.
Why is internet so bad?
Okay.
So well, anyway.
My stuff down. Cool. I'll see you around. Yeah. No, whether
These are all the coins that are supported. This is the one that we got, which is the cool one with the aluminum. It almost looks like you want to have a beer and use it as your coaster. This one is the same one, a little bit cheaper. That we can consider also that it will be cheaper. It's exactly the same, it's just a little bit smaller, easier to put in your pocket. And then they have one without Bluetooth. This is the payment model that is coming out, and this is the app. But I'm going to show you how it goes without the app. How's the sale price? American market is going to be $150, 120 for the smaller one, and 110 for the one without Bluetooth. But I feel like the one without Bluetooth, I don't see the point anymore. It has to have Bluetooth. So, go to my wallet, right? iOS or web wallet. Now we are gonna sync it. So I'm enabling the Bluetooth. We are syncing it. We are pairing the devices. It gives me a code. And boom, we are now synced. They can customize tokens. This is an MCA20 token. I think it takes them a week to get it in the system. And they are doing something really smart. I guess like the chairman is an old guy, friend of the Taiwanese government. The second biggest city in Taiwan after Taipei, I can't even pronounce it. They are launching this marketing campaign. They have created this token. And many tourists that go to Taipei, they receive this token. So they are incentivized to go to the second biggest city to spend the token. And then that's where they are using the prototyping of the POS to use that token. So they integrate that token by the Taiwanese, by the second biggest city in Taiwan. So people are actually using it in real cases as a museum, as a merchandise store, in a very small scale. But I'm from Spain. Tourism is so big now. I was imagining the tourists using So this is really cool.
Yeah, let's keep in touch.
I'll bother you guys. You have my card. I'll bother you guys a little bit. I expect from you a little text or something. You have my card too. They are really ugly. That's why I don't even use them. But I think I will have it. But he has it. Miranda has it. I think I did too. Okay. Are you in charge of hardware? Really nice meeting you. Say hello to Johnny.
All right. I will. Yeah. Absolutely.
You have your car with you, and then I can, or you know what? Let's hook up on LinkedIn. Oh, you have a car?
No, it's not.
We. Oh, we already faced in the I guess we can just, you can type your, So you are usually, are you usually based in Beijing? Your office in Beijing, you are visiting? Yeah. All right, I'll send you a request later. Thank you, Jack. Thank you. I'll send you a, and we are on connect. I haven't done
I just need to get it now.
Right.
That's nice. I have it like in the floor of my There's a song that I like to listen to. Or I can leave it with them, but I never think ahead of time. Oh yeah, that's something.
She had like actually one of my friends might work on her. Oh, okay. Actually, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure.
It was so good. It was great.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed
Well,
it.
you know, you got these amazing women.
I know.
I mean, it's like
It was incredible.
just put them together, let them talk.
Yeah.
The advice and the I think I still.
All right. I'm leaving. Bye. Bye.
Yeah.